losing those 3 games made players realize that maybe we need to make some adjustments to get our game to the next level. When I met Faf for the first time as a 20-year-old, I thought, jeepers, who's this cockatiel guy running around in a vest? And I told him that. I said, who the hell, like, you strutting around here? It was one of the most heartbreaking moments I've had as a coach, because I knew the sort of effort that particular team had put in, the environment, the culture was fantastic. And it took the team a long time to recover from that loss.
Welcome to the Pitchside Podcast, the home of authentic cricket conversations with me, Mr. Hopo.
Hello and welcome to the Pitchside Podcast, the home of authentic cricket conversations, told one episode at a time. And today I have an exciting guest with me that I've been wanting to sit down and chat to for the longest time. He is now the recent Lions coach, and he just walked away with the 4-day Cup trophy, and I'm excited to chat to him and find out a little bit more about Russell Domingo. Coach, welcome to the show.
Sejo, great to be here. I've watched some of your episodes, so I'm really looking forward to the conversation. And it's probably a good time to have a conversation after winning the 4-day campaign.
Yes, it is the perfect time to chat because I know we didn't have a good start with the Lions, but I mean, that final was a good one against Western Province.
An amazing couple of days. Look, I think it was a great advert for domestic cricket. 2 really good sides, probably 9 or 10 international players at an iconic stadium. And the game went nearly 5 days. So as a cricket lover and an advocate of good cricket in South Africa and as a franchise coach, I was really excited by what I saw. And cricket South Africa and players in South Africa are still in a good place. There's still some really good players around.
That final had so many ebbs and flows. It was filled with so much drama. And there was a point where the Lions were 35 for 5, I think, at some point. Just talk us through how dramatic that first innings was for us.
Yeah, look, our poor captain, Domingos, I think he's lost 7 out of 8 tosses this season. And it wasn't a great toss to lose in the final. Everybody wanted to bowl with overhead conditions and a nice pitch to bowl on. And 35 for 5, we were probably on our knees at that particular stage. But the resilience shown by the lower order, Delano Porgita, a decent bowling performance. And then once again in the second innings, I think we might have been 70 ahead, 7 down, and once again, Delano Porgita and the lower order got us into a position where we could actually dream about winning the game. So it was an amazing 5 days of cricket played by 2 really competitive sides, and some really good skills were on display. And like I say, as a coach, I mean, those are the games that you will forever remember as a coach and as a player. We said during the game to some of the players that maybe in 20 years' time you wake up and you think, jeepers, how did we win that game? And true as Bob, we ended up winning the game. So I'm sure these memories will stay with players for a long time.
So you speak about Dom having to lose so many tosses. So when you look at the Lions' batting performance and we look at the fact that the Lions lost the toss, right? And it was a gloomy morning. So what do you blame that to? That that unfortunate batting performance.
Calling the wrong call.
Is it the coin toss, losing it,
Yeah,
and the
look,
weather and the conditions, or is it just because some players made poor batting choices?
No, I don't think so. I mean, end of the day, you've also got to give credit to Western Province. They've got some fantastic bowlers. Dane Patterson has just come back from New Zealand, where he's got a phenomenal set of skills as a bowler, and particularly when conditions suit him. He's like a little bit of a Vernon Philander was maybe 5 or 6 years ago for South Africa. So he's an extremely skillful bowler. Buren Hendricks, an international bowler. And those sorts of things can happen when you're up against high-quality bowlers. And those 2 are really good bowlers. And we're backed up by Mpongwana and Nabe, who bowled really well. So as much as you can put some blame on some soft dismissals here and there were also some outstanding deliveries and some really good bowling conditions for some really good bowlers.
So we have some really good bowling performances and batting performances from Delano, like you said. But there's also some players off the field that didn't get an opportunity to be part of that starting 11 that were good for the team, right?
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. Look, as a coach, I mean, I sort of develop relationships with players, and when I've got to leave players that have got us into the final out of big games like a final, it's probably harder for me than it is for the players. So I think of a guy like Mitch van Beeren, who's probably our second highest run scorer in the campaign, to not play him in the final due to an injury to Vian um, is hard. It's heartbreaking. Wandile McQuaid, who's played all 7 games and has been an integral part of our success. The way he's played some important innings at crucial times. He just connects people so well in the change room. So it's heartbreaking leaving those players out. But ultimately, that's the nature of professional sport. You've got to make these tough decisions, and to get players of the caliber of Temba Bavuma back, to get Hamza back, to get Mareki back, it's also hard to leave those players out because they've also played the integral part. So tough decisions. We're fortunate that it worked out really well. And yeah, it's,
So how do you begin to have a conversation with a player like Mitch van Buren, telling him that, sorry, Mitch, you're not going to be part of the starting 11 of a final?
Sejo, I probably had like sleepless nights for 2 nights because I know the amount of effort he's put into his game. I see the improvement in his game, the performances he's put in. But ultimately, true words break no friendship. So you just got to tell the truth. This is the reason you're not playing. We value your performances. Make sure your attitude is good going into the game because if there's a concussion sub, you've got to be back into the team. So you've got to still keep them in a positive mindset because anything can happen in the morning of the game. And it's been an entire squad performance. The players have played 1 game, 2 games. Some players have played 3 games. Some players have played 7 games. And everybody at some stage has contributed to the success of the team. And it's not just the 11 that won that game on Sunday, but there are probably 16 or 17 players that have played a massive role in the side being successful in this campaign.
Let's chat about how you got your opportunity of being part of Lions. I mean, you were from Bangladesh, Netherlands as well, and then you came through to South Africa and you were appointed as head coach of the Lions. Take us through the process of that.
So I finished in Bangladesh end of January. I had to give them 3 months notice, end of December. And because I'd been there for nearly 4 years and it's quite a tough environment being away from home, and I just needed a little bit of a time out from cricket. I fished for 4 months. I went fishing,
Okay.
traveled around the world a little bit, went to some nice places that I wouldn't normally go to, and just spending a bit of time at home was really cool. And then this opportunity came up with the Lions, and I'd done a bit of work with the Dutch, and I know John Oliphant from having had him in our change room previously, and the sort of environment that's been created here definitely appealed to me. It's an iconic stadium. It's an amazing place. It's got an amazing group of players. They've put together an amazing squad. The previous coaches put together a powerhouse squad. Administration seems in place. So it was a no-brainer for me. I love working with, when I say the high-performing players and high-performing teams, it was just the perfect fit at that particular stage. It allows me to maybe do 1 or 2 smaller things on when there's no Lions cricket available. I did the Sunrisers for a period of time, a little bit of punditry work, so it opens up some other avenues. But most importantly, I've just really enjoyed the environment, the stadium, administration, the selectors. It's a great place to be part of at the moment.
But you didn't have a dream start because with the one day cup, with the one day cup specifically, I mean, I think there are 3 back-to-back losses that we
Okay.
experienced
Settle
when you
down.
started.
Yeah, I know that. Settle down. It wasn't a great start. You only lose your last game, so the last game was really good.
Yes.
Look, and I suppose players need to take time to adjust to the new coach. The new coach needs to take time to adjust and understand how players go about their business, see what sort of improvements they need to make if they want to get better. So it was probably not the best start, but the best start. Because it made us make some certain changes in the way we train, the way we play, whether it's technically, whether it's mentally, whether it's tactically. And it wasn't the best start, but probably the best start, if you understand what I'm saying. Probably a great way to start my regime because you start well. It's like, oh, well, this is easy. But we didn't start well, so you know you've got your work cut out here. There's some things that you need to improve on.
The Tuskers opening game.
Let's move past that one.
I really want to chat about that because away game for you guys. You're playing against a team that got promoted into Division 1, and this is a team. First of all, Lions is a team that obviously were champions the previous season. So obviously people have like great expectations. So what happened with the Tuskers game?
It's a great story because full credit to the Tuskers. They won the toss, put us in, or I think we might have won the toss, decided we're going to bat first because the wicket didn't look that good. And we got absolutely schooled by the Tuskers. And like I say, that's cricket. It's a leveler of the highest order, and some great lessons were learned in those first 2 or 3 games because certain things players were doing at domestic level would be good enough for domestic level. But if they get up to a higher level, they've got to make some sort of adjustments. And losing those 3 games made players realize that maybe we need to make some adjustments to get our game to the next level because I'm all about, of course, winning competitions, but also preparing players to play international cricket. I mean, we've got a coaching staff here that are vastly experienced in international cricket. We know what it takes, what the level of expectation, what the level of skill required for international cricket is all about, and we can try and help these players make that adjustment. And maybe they were comfortable being domestic players and dominating at domestic level, but some of their games and strategies would never quite cut it at international level, and we've had to make some adjustments to try and help them get to that level.
So, what were some of the assessments that you had made going into this team?
There's a lot of quite a bit of technical stuff that sort of had to be addressed, particularly in the batting group. When it came to the bowling side, they definitely were a team that was a wicket-taking team without maybe the discipline and the control that's required in international cricket. So we've had to tighten up on our disciplines, particularly the ball, being able to bowl more consistently for longer periods of time without having to search for wickets. And because in international cricket, that's what you have to do. You've got to be consistent. You've got to do it for hours and hours and hours to reap the rewards. Maybe at domestic level, some guys feel they can do it for 3 or 4 hours because something's going to happen. But in the international level, you've got to do it for 3 or 4 hours before something happens. So maybe those mental shifts, technical stuff for the batting, trying to develop better techniques to counter certain types of bowlers. So there's been a fair bit of work doing, and Hashim's been phenomenal with assisting the batters in their technique. Alan's been unbelievable in making fast bowlers understand the rigors of being an international bowler. So there's been progress.
And what's it like working with Hash and Alan? I know you've worked with them in the past, but what is it like to have them here at the Lions
No,
as well?
I said to one of the players the other day that, of course, you can look to go to another franchise and you can look at other opportunities, but I don't think the other opportunities available will have Hashim Amla behind the net looking at your technique or Alan Donald helping you with your mindset in bowling. So it's phenomenal to have those guys. Yeah, I'm blessed as a coach to be able to call on those sort of expertise, and full credit to Lions management for allowing us to get that sort of caliber into our coaching setup. And I think that's an X factor that maybe other teams aren't allowed to have, to call on that sort of playing and coaching experience is second to none. It's an attraction for players to be here because they get to work with some of the greatest players that have ever played the game.
You touched a bit on Bangladesh a couple of minutes ago and how tough those conditions were. Let's firstly talk about why the decision to take on that opportunity and be head coach of Bangladesh.
Lesego, I've coached in South Africa I'm now 49. I've started coaching when I was 21, and 25 of those years I've been coaching in South Africa. There's nothing that can compare to coaching in the subcontinent. The sort of passion, the sort of following, the sort of media focus, the sort of desperation to win is at a totally different level to South Africa. You must understand that a place like Bangladesh has got 200 million people and all they follow is cricket. South Africa, we've got 60 million people. We've got rugby, we've got football, we've got a bit of cricket, we've got boxing. So it's a little bit less following. In Bangladesh, it is just cricket. And to be able to deal with that sort of expectation, that sort of pressure, that sort of constant scrutiny is an unbelievable learning experience for any coach. So any coach, I would encourage him to do a subcontinent team at some particular stage because there's nothing like coaching in the subcontinent. It's chaos. It is ruthless. It is sometimes you think, cheapers, how's that worked or how have they selected that team? But it still works and it still functions and they can still beat anybody on the day. So it is a fantastic learning experience for any coach to coach in that sort of environment because it's nothing like we've ever experienced in South Africa.
What were some of the greatest achievements under your leadership at Bangladesh?
So it's a tricky one because we played a T20 series against Australia. We beat Australia 4-1. That is good.
That's epic.
Beat New Zealand 3-2. But I think the two biggest highlights, not just for Bangladesh, but probably as a coach, for Bangladesh to come to South Africa and win a one-day series against South Africa in the up in the Highveld on wickets that don't suit Bangladesh was something that, as a coach, I feel not just for myself but for the cricket organization immensely proud because we beat South Africa at Centurion twice, lost with the Wonders once, and for them to win a one-day series in South Africa, having never won a game here before, is a phenomenal achievement because their style of play doesn't suit to play in South Africa, and South Africa a full strength start that side. Then also to go to New Zealand and win a test match in Mount Maunganui for Bangladesh. They hadn't won a game there in I think 38 games. And to win a test match convincingly against New Zealand
Wow.
in New Zealand is a memory that I will forever um, live with me. The celebrations in the change room, guys were opening Diet Cokes and spraying Diet Cokes all over each other. Will forever stick with me. It was a phenomenal achievement for a team that generally doesn't compete in New Zealand.
Yeah.
So it was pretty cool.
Coach, I know you're a professional, but I want you to take me through what it's like to come to South Africa. You're head coach of Bangladesh, and you're playing in Durban, you're playing in PE, and you're playing against South Africa, the very same country that obviously you're born and raised in. What is that like?
No, I think always my allegiance will always be with South Africa. I'm South African and I always want South Africa to do well and I always want the team to prosper. And I mean, some of the players I've got lifelong relationships with: Kyle Abbots and David Millers and JP Dumini's and Hashim Amlas. They're people that I've loved working with and people that I love because they're South Africans. But when you get here with a foreign team, it's work, it's business. That sort of sentimentality goes out the window and probably makes you a little bit more determined to do well against your own people. And whilst it wasn't good seeing South Africa suffer those sort of defeats because they were under pressure to qualify for a World Cup. There was all sorts of stuff going on in South African cricket. We could sense as Bangladeshi management that, there's some big trouble in the South African camp. There was a little bit of dissension and arguing in the field, and it didn't look good from the outside, and a little bit sad because I'm South African and I worked with that team for 5 years to have seen it go into that sort of state, but also nice because it gives us an opportunity to win. And at the end of the day, that's what you got to do as a coach. You got to put that sort of sentimentality aside and always give your best for the team that you are working with, and that's the nature of it.
And how different is it to coach the Proteas side and then coach Bangladesh, knowing the dynamics that come with being a South African and coaching a South African team?
There's nothing, Lesejo, that can prepare you for coaching Bangladesh because everything is so structured and catered for when you coach South Africa. In Bangladesh, everything's on you. Go for it. If you get it wrong, it's your fault. If that batting order doesn't fire, it's your fault. If the team doesn't win, it's your fault. So in South Africa, you're a lot more protected. And when I say protected, you've got a lot more sort of support around you. In Bangladesh, you're the head coach, everything's on you type thing. So a lot trickier. It can be very brutal.
Do you have more support though? Is that how you felt when you were coach of the national side? Did you feel like you had support, whether from the media, from the team, or whoever you felt like you had support?
Within my management team, 100%. So I was very blessed that I had Doc Musaji as a team manager, who used to sort of keep all the stuff away from the coaches and the pressures that he might be facing as the media, whether it's political or whether it's selection, whether it's style of play, whatever it's going to be, he'd protect me from that. I had A.D. Bowl was my assistant coach, who was sort of my blind spot to help me deal with certain things I wasn't good at dealing with. So I had a management team there that I 100% trusted, that I knew 100% backed me. And there was a lot more, what's the word I'm looking for? There was a lot more love within that management team than in Bangladesh. You're never quite sure because you get given a management team and you're not quite sure, what's this guy's agenda? What's he up to? Can I trust him to make this decision? Can I trust him what he's saying? So very different to the sort of culture and environment that exists within South African cricket at that stage. I promise you, when I came on tour to South Africa with Bangladesh, like our first practice session was in the Wonders. I walked into this very room and I said to one of my coaches, we've got no idea how lucky we are in South African cricket with these stadiums, these facilities. With all our issues, it is still an amazing place to come to.
Speaking about South African cricket, you took over Gary Kirsten. What was that like? I mean, and the pressure that came with that.
In my first press conference, I sort of, because I'm a Manchester United fan, I alluded to the fact that David Moyes had taken over from Alex Ferguson at that particular stage. And I said, well, I sort of know what David Moyes feels like now, because to follow Gary Kirsten is a really, really tough gig. He's an amazing coach, an amazing bloke. And obviously, because I'm a less known coach and a small name coach, it comes with a lot of sort of scrutiny and, you haven't played at the highest level and, oh, who's this guy? What's he going to tell us type of thing? And it takes a little bit of time to find your feet. And it did take a little bit of time to find my feet, because it's a big team with some big personalities and some big players. But as you progress, like players do, coaches get better and they improve and they find their way and they find their niche and they find their style that they want to adopt. And it was an amazing journey. It was nearly 5 years, and some of the happiest coaching memories of my life was coaching South Africa. Some amazing performances, some amazing relationships, some amazing wins, some devastating losses. But a time that I always look back at fondly and say, cool, that was really cool. I don't want to do it again, but it was really cool.
Talking about some fondest moments, share with us one of your fondest obviously on the field moment and some epic win that you were part of.
I think I actually spoke to the Lions team on day 3 of our game here against Western Province, where we were sort of under the pump and we were down and out. The game looked like it was going to be lost. And I used the example of a test match in Perth. It was Keshav Maharaj's first test. We got 240. Australia were 140 without loss. Dale Steyn broke his shoulder, couldn't bowl. We had Rabada, young 20-year-old. Keshav Maharaj making a debut. Vernon Philander and Temba Bavuma bowling for us.
What? How did Temba bowl?
Temba Bavuma bowled, and he got a wicket first ball off a no ball, but anyway. So we got 240, they were 140 without loss. Dale carried off the field, got a wicket. We end up winning that test match by 200 runs through sheer determination, guts, skill. It was one of the greatest test matches I've ever been involved in. A little bit sort of like this game unfolded, where we were like, how are we going to get back into this game? But South Africans generally find a way. Great characters, great desire, great resilience, like we showed this weekend, and they generally find a way to deal with that sort of adversity, and we came good then, like we did this weekend.
Coach, let's go back to the very first series that you remember being part of with the national side.
As head coach?
As head coach?
As head coach, it was a tour to Sri Lanka, one of the toughest tours you'll ever go on as South Africa. It was a one-day series. We got absolutely hammered 4-1. It was brutal. It was really hard. Lasith Malinga cleaned us up. It was my first tour as head coach of South Africa, and this is hard, because it'd be nice if we had gone to Zim or we had gone to Bangladesh, but we got a tough tour to Sri Lanka, where South Africa hadn't won for 21 years, so it was a really tough introduction as the head coach of South Africa.
Was that a bit of a baptism of fire as
It
well?
was pretty hard. Fortunately, we went back there a year later and won a test series there for the first time in 21 years, so that's a nice story. But that was that good lessons learned from the first tour to the second tour, and South Africa's, Sri Lanka is a really tough place to tour. The heat is oppressive. We've got amazingly skilled cricketers. You don't just go there and win. So it was one of the toughest assignments South African cricket's undertaken for a long time.
I don't know if I read whether it was on Faf's book or AB's book, but they relate a story about how Kumar Sangakkara invited you guys to his restaurant, and you guys had like
It's Crab,
meal.
Ministry of Crab, that's what it's called. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Were you part of that, or was
We
it
were
only
there.
the players?
No, we were all there.
And?
He's got a very fancy restaurant called Ministry of Crab. I think he shares it with Mahela Jawadina. And it's sort of a touristy type of, if you go to Colombo in Sri Lanka, you got to go and eat at Kumar Sangakkara's restaurant. And we ate some really good crabs there for a couple of hours.
How would you describe your coaching style?
Seiko, I think it's very much relationship based. I'm not a big coach who's played big international cricket, so for me to instruct and tell and force players to do a certain way or do things a certain way is not really going to fly. So I've got to develop relationships, build trust with players, get to understand the person before I can sort of impart my thinking and my knowledge on that particular player. So very much relationship based. I think being able to get on with people is probably one of the most important attributes any coach can have. I think that the dictatorship, Hitler-style leadership is outdated and doesn't fly for long periods of time. Can maybe work on a one-off series or one-off campaign, but for a lengthy period of time, it just wears players down. So you've got to just try and be as decent a person as you can be and build relationships as best you possibly can.
And I know you're big on love, right?
Uh,
Because I read Faf's book.
I haven't read his book yet, but I've been sent a copy. But
There is a sab chapter on you, an entire sab chapter on Russell Domingo.
oh, there we go.
There it is.
It's highlighted.
It's highlighted.
I've seen it, but I haven't read it as yet. But I had a really good relationship with Faf. I think of the captains I worked with, him and I really connected well, not just in the cricketing side of things, but also in terms of our personalities and the sort of things we value within the team and the sort of way we want to try and do things. So when I met Faf for the first time as a 20-year-old, I thought, jeepers, who's this cocky little guy running around in a vest? And I told him that. I said, who the hell, like, you strutting around here? But he's developed and matured into such a fine young man and an unbelievable cricketer and an amazing captain. And one of the captains that I really connected with at all levels, whether it's regarding cricket, whether it's off the field, whether it's about other things, we always really connected and bonded really well. And we're different people because he's fancy, I'm not fancy.
Okay. There's actually a part that I want to read. So, Faf says, Russell and I hit it off immediately. And it wasn't just his technical abilities that appealed to me. He didn't have an inflated ego driving his behavior. He was there to serve the team to the best of his ability. And he had a saying, everybody needs love, which stuck with me throughout my captaincy and to this day.
Oh, wow. That's pretty nice.
Everybody needs love. Where does that come from?
It's
Thanks, Nemo.
probably pretty true. I think people generally, and everybody wants to feel part of something and wants to feel validated and valued and listened to. And often you think these big name players that because they're so good and they're so talented that they can just deal with things by themselves. Not necessarily the case. Whether it's AB de Villiers, whether it's Dale Steyn, Kagiso Rabada, Vernon Philander, they're all fighting similar sort of battles that normal people would fight. They just manage to be good at a certain game. But they've all got insecurities and they've all got challenges and they've all got things that they've got concerns about. And de Villiers is a prime example, probably the greatest player South Africa's ever had. But there were certain days where he didn't want to go and bat. You'd almost have to be coerced into, no, you've got to go and bat now. You can't. And yet he comes across and he walks out of bat that he'll just dominate and assert himself over every single bowler.
Stick with that story. AB de Villiers here at the Wanderers against West Indies. I want to hear that story.
I think it was about, when I think about it, it was like 11 overs to go and de Villiers was adamant that we need to send David Miller in because Suleiman Ben had an over left. And during that particular time, I was always being criticized for keeping de Villiers back too long and keeping de Villiers back long. Why is he not opening the batting in T20s? Why is he batting number 5? He should be batting number 3. And I just said, AB, you've got to go and bat. You're the best player in the world. You've got to do it. He said, Russ, send in David Miller. I'm not feeling it. I said, AB, come on, you've got to go and do it. You're the best player in the world. Well, not me, but he went out and played one of the greatest innings of all time. He got 100 off 31 balls. So it just shows the insecurities that some of the best players in the world have got. And they're just human at the end of the day. You think that they're these brave, bravado, can do anything, but they got the same issues you and I might have in life. And
you
touched on manage that.
And you touched on challenges, and I want us to just relive the famous 2015 World Cup semi-final. We're playing against New Zealand, and there was a little bit of a controversy and drama that took place before you guys went onto the field the next day.
Yeah, there was quite a bit of. I could probably write a book about that particular incident that took place that night, but I'm not going to because it's nearly 10 years ago now. But the disappointing thing, and I've often said that with that controversy, it sort of gave the team an outlet to lose. It sort of gave them if we lose, it's because of that. Because at that particular stage, I honestly thought we were the best side in the world. We were ranked number 1. We just beaten Australia. We had de Villiers in the form of his life. We had a batting lineup and a bowling lineup that could go down as one of the best one-day teams of all time. And for that sort of controversy to sort of derail the campaign was heartbreaking and disappointing. In saying all of that, we got ourselves into a great position in the game. A little bit of weather curtailed our innings. We made a few mistakes under pressure, which is normal because there's no perfect game, Lesego. Everybody makes mistakes during the game, and a few things just didn't go our way today. But it's a game that has lived with me for 9 years, and I've probably thought about that game. It used to be every day, maybe every second or third day now. I spoke about it to somebody yesterday as well about that particular game. So
Sure.
it was one of the most heartbreaking moments I've had as a coach because I knew the sort of effort that particular team had put in, the environment, the culture was fantastic. And it took the team a long time to recover from that loss. It's actually quite sad.
I actually want us to give the audience context, right? You get a call or you get into a meeting and you have to change the starting 11 from Kyle Abbott and include Vernon Philander. We need to know the story.
I don't know if it's something that I should or want to discuss, to be honest, because it's 9 years ago. But that's sort of what happened. I'll never get. I was actually at Waiheke Island with my mate Adi Brill when I got a call to say I got to come back straight away for a meeting, and that's sort of where all this sort of stuff unfolded. And the merits of it, whether right or wrong, there are merits in picking Vernon 100% because he gives us extra batting depth. He's a world-class bowler. There was definitely merits in playing Kyle Abbott. He got 4 for 20 in the quarterfinal. So there's no right and wrong in cricket. You can say 2 slips in a gully. I can say 3 slips. So there's no right and wrong. Yeah, it's just one of those instances where it was sort of out of my control.
How much did that affect the game?
I don't think massively. I mean, Vernon bowled decently that night. But like I said, I think emotionally and mentally it gave the team an excuse if we lost. It's sort of, well, if you lose, it's because of that. And I think that maybe just took away the 1 or 2% that maybe the team needed to cross the line in those tight games.
In retrospect, would you have done anything different in that particular moment and incident?
It's tough because, I mean, every single player in that particular group on their day could have played for South Africa and performed really well. So I'm never going to say Vernon should never have played because Vernon's a world-class player. I'm never going to say, oh, we could have won if Kyle Abbott played. Kyle might have had a shocker. There's no hindsight's a great sight. But what I will say is that it maybe took away the psychological edge that the team might have had because it gave them a reason, an excuse that if you lose, well, that's why we've lost. And that's the heartbreaking thing, is that we try to create an excuse-free environment, but that particular instance gave the team an excuse to possibly not get over the line. If that makes sense. Sadly so.
So
and
you said,
Lesego, I promise you, I took that team a year at least to overcome that particular event.
so I'm interested to know about the conversations that took place after that whole loss against New Zealand. Like, were people quiet in the bus? Did anyone say anything in the change room? Like, what was the mood like?
The change rooms, I'm always very respectful of the change room because it's a sanctuary. But I've never seen a team as emotional as that particular team was that particular night, because there were grown men crying like toddlers. It was unbelievable because that team had given everything. They were a fantastic team. And they probably deserved a little bit more than what they were given on that particular day because they played fantastically well for a period of time. But there were grown men crying like little girls.
Little girls, hey, careful. But what's your most proudest moment? I know there has been some really dark times, but I'm pretty sure there are a couple of like moments where
I mean, it's just
you're happy.
like, if, in terms of cricketing side of things, I mean, there's obviously some amazing wins, and but I think just being appointed head coach to Africa is an immense. I mean, when I say I'm a no-name cricketer, to get to that level as a coach is something that not many people have experienced. Maybe 10 people have coached South Africa since readmission, and I'm maybe one of those 10. So that is something as a coach I'm immensely proud of, being able to coach my own country, to work with some of the best players that have played the game, and forget about the results, win or loss, just to be afforded that opportunity, which not many people have been, makes me immensely proud.
So we're shooting this around the almost around the start of the T20 competition. And just talk us through what you're expecting from the Lions team.
I'm expecting to give me headaches because I've got so many quality players, and unfortunately, I can only play 11. The the pros and cons of having such a strong squad is that some really good players miss out. So in the first game, I mean, our top four will be something like Reza, Ryan Rickleton, Tema Bavuma, Rassi van der Dussen, all international players. But what that means is that players like Connor Esterhuizen, Zubair Hamza, Mo Manak, Ronan Herman struggle to get game time. And that's the downside of it, because I'm all about trying to find some opportunities for our local players to play at the highest level so that they can pitch a they can get themselves in the frame to play for South Africa. Because
Yes.
whilst winning competitions is important, also producing players for South Africa is just as rewarding and just as important for a coach. So that's the tricky part.
Okay, I want to continue this conversation. I think we need a part two because, see, the sun has already
Sun
set.
setting on me, I think
Yeah,
that's it.
it is. It is. So unfortunately, I need to wrap up, but I'm gonna give the floor to ask a couple of questions for Coach Russell. And I know we do have a couple of questions that were sent through on social media.
Okay.
So we've got our floor manager, production assistant, is going to read out a couple of these questions for you, Russell.
Here we go. I think that in South Africa we are blessed that whilst we've got some big personalities and superstar players, I think they all generally come from number one, good schools, decent families. I think a South African trait is that they're all still very respectful of their peers, their teammates, their coaches. It's just a South African trait. So it was pretty easy. Those big personalities are pretty easy to manage because they all were very team focused and all come from upbringings where respect and respecting your teammates and respecting the culture was of immense importance. So it was pretty easy to manage those guys. Yeah, I am pretty chilled. I Results are important, but I'm not all just about results. I love developing players, their skills. I love seeing people grow as personalities. Um, I'm not I'm not a schoolmaster or headmaster that's going to whoop. I like players to take responsibility for their own behaviors, their own performances, their own actions. Obviously, there are ramifications if you don't toe the line, but I want people to just become better people and in that way become good cricketers. I did. I was one of five selectors at that particular stage. There was Andrew Hudson, there was Linda Zondi, and Hussein Manak. So I was one of four selectors. I did have say, but I was one of four. So three others might have disagreed with what I wanted. Maybe someone else disagreed with what we wanted. I did have say, and ultimately I will never talk out of selection because what the selection panel decides, I might not agree with it, but I've got to support it. So I can never say that selector said that. I can never do that. But the selection panel decides, I've got to just, might not agree with it, but I've got to support it. I do. I'm still pretty old-fashioned, I suppose. I know the modern trend is to be positive and express yourself and play shots and do this and do that, but there's still a place for good old-fashioned, solid, organized, disciplined, grinding down opposition, being patient. Um, that style of play still not just in 4-day cricket, but in other formats as well. The best players are able to play all formats by being disciplined, being professional, sticking to strategies, sticking to game plans. And I mean, the modern days, you just go out there, play with instinct and play with flair. And I don't quite buy into that sort of philosophy. Whew, it's a tricky one. Number one, we've got to play more four-day cricket. There's not enough four-day cricket being played. Number two, we've got to try and find ways to um, get more of the national players to play four-day cricket. Whether that means they've got to structure the fixtures when there's no test matches or when there's no international cricket, but find ways where even for 3 of the 10 games, some international players are playing so that the domestic players can sort of measure themselves against how the international players go about it. So that's one way of doing it. And another way to do it is by having a lot more A-side tours, picking the best players, whether it's a north versus south, whether it's more incoming, outgoing A-side tours, but definitely expose the best domestic players to more foreign conditions, more international teams, and that way try and bridge the gap.
Awesome. I'm happy. Are you guys happy? Any more questions? Two. Oh man. Okay. Okay.
So um, it's it's easy to develop a culture with international teams. It's easier simply because that is the pinnacle of where all players want to come to. So when players come there, they just buy into the culture and they just, this is where I want to be. This is how it works. Okay, cool. That's how I want to do it. Whereas in domestic cricket, some players want to come here, but they don't actually want to be here because they want to play for South Africa. So they're sort of on their own journey to just try and use this system to get into that system. So you've got to develop a culture that, number one, promotes individuality, that allows players to have that ambition to play South Africa. Because ultimately, this is a part of the journey to get to South Africa, and you've got to be okay with the fact that some players their ambition is the Lions is nice, but I want to get there, and you've got to be okay with that because that's what. Every player is different. Every player is on his own journey. Some players only want to play at the Lions. Some players are happy being at the Lions. They don't want the pressure of playing South Africa. They understand that they might not be good enough to play South Africa, but they can still be really good Lions players. So trying to manage that process and identify the players that you feel, oh, this guy could go for international cricket. We've got to push his buttons this way and be non-negotiable on certain things. But you know, this guy, he's happy playing at the Lions. That's maybe his ceiling. That's cool. Let's maybe be a little bit softer on him in certain aspects. And trying to find that balance can sometimes be challenging because in international cricket, everybody's got the ambition of being the best in the world. Domestic cricket, not everybody's got that ambition. Some guys are just happy to get a Lions contract and play a couple of one-day games and T20 games in the season and see their mates after the game, and they're cool with it. Understand what I'm saying? And trying to merge that can be tricky, but comes with a little bit of experience.
Last question. Last question. And that's the experience that you have, right?
I think so. So I think I'm very blessed that Hashim comes with the smallest ego in the history of cricket. He's probably the most down-to-earth person you'll ever meet. And Alan Donald, who's one of the greatest bowlers of all time, is one of the nicest men you will ever meet. He can't say a nasty word about anything. He was a horrible bowler. He was nasty when he bowled, but as a person off the field, he's just white lightning. He's just pretty chilled. And has just got so much experience. So their egos are non-existent when it comes to managing them.
If you want Coach Russell to come back on the Pitchside podcast, make sure you comment below and just say, Coach Russell, please make sure that you come back for part 2. Thank you so much for joining me. I think this was a really good conversation and hopefully you'll make time for the next time, right?
Thanks for having me. Anytime.
Did you enjoy it?
pretty cool.
It was good. I
Pretty
didn't
good.
grill you too much,
No, it
did
was
I?
pretty lenient to that. But I'm worried about part 2.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in to the Page Side podcast. And make sure that you like, you comment, and you subscribe to the channel. And of course, just leave a nice comment and let us know which part of this episode you enjoyed. So from me, Leseho, the team, and Coach Russell Domingo, we'll see you on the next episode.
Welcome to the Pitchside Podcast, the home of authentic cricket conversations with me, Leseho.